Hi, everybody. Welcome to the next installment of the webinar on the meaning of cancer and cancering. And so glad that you were able to join me today. And I'm so glad to be able to join you. We've covered a lot of ground so far in the past two meetings. And I wanted to take up some matters that I think I said I would look into when we first started out. Because I said that the the issue of cancer is really a hologram or model for all chronic ailments, and so I will touch a bit more on the specifics of the cancer condition, but I do want to share with you the overall uh, point of view about how chronic conditions like this arise and what happens to us. The main thing to consider is the what I call, what I've written about, I should say, what I have talked about in my uh, audio series CD set called The Natural Laws, not the Natural Laws of Self Healing, that's also good, but the Phoenix process, 1 minute a day to health, well being, and longevity. Before I begin, I just wanted to remind you about this book, Reversing Cancer Through Mental Imagery by Simca Ben Yosef, who is a student of my dear departed teacher of blessed memory, Colette Abukir Muscat. And she studied with her for onwards to 20 years, specifically only being tutored in the area of cancer and cancer healing and only working with cancer patients. This book is the outgrowth of that long experience and does cover what she termed what's termed in here and Colette originated as a 12-phase program for cancer healing. So there's so much covered here that it would be, I think, just a standard reference book for anybody going through this condition or for anybody who wants to present somebody with a book like this as a standard reference guide who's going through this kind of situation. Thank you. And I do want to say that uh, the next time we meet, we're talking so much now about over these meetings together about what's going on with us internally and what's happening and what we're doing and what's happening to us. What's happening to us, what we're doing that in some way is connected to what's happening to us. It's something that's going on between us and us, and and the next time we're going to talk about and get more into what's going on between you and or us and the people who are there in our lives in one way or another who have some relevance for us as we're going through this chronic chapter of life, be they family members, friends, uh, other people who are in the vicinity, who are in your life space, and also any clinicians that you may be working with, be they in the MD field or outside the MD field, and so on. So we're going to really be focusing a lot on the relationship issue that's so important in this process. And I have mentioned before that, and I think it bears stating again because my personal experience over so many long decades of doing this work and with all chronic conditions in general is that there's always a relational issue involved. Relational issue means that there's some relationship that's happened in your life that's going on or has gone on in which something has gone awry or amiss and has created a conflict of some sort, a strong emotional response of some sort. I did mention at the beginning Dr. Hammer, rather I should say Dr. Hamer from Germany, who lost his son who was shot to death either by accident or murder a month before he developed testicular cancer. It was his only progeny, who was his only child, and his own feeling of the loss, the grief, and also that his lineage, from his point of view, was cut, was severed. and so on. So there was this relational, there's always a relational uh, focus that we have to look at, and I'm going to cover that a bit now in terms of letting you know two major items that are part of the process that I think is worth understanding and considering for this condition. You don't, my point of view is you don't just want to focus, excuse me, on the physical part of this process. The technicians that you're seeing who are concerned with the physical part of the process cannot help you with the rest of what I'm trying to explain to you today and what I do with all of my work and the direction that I've taken on over these past, particularly these past 40 plus years. So I want to share a bit of that with you, and the rest of it, of course, the depth of it and the breadth of it and the height of it, all of that is covered in classes that I give beginning this September, coming September to into the middle of June. And I'll mention that later on about how to make contact with me or how to find out about the classes that are going on. So the 2 points I want to concern myself with about the genealogy of all of this stuff, which the cancering condition is part of it, of course, is that the I'm going to acquaint you with what I call the physiology of death and life. Physiology of death and life. So the the first order of what we have to understand is that the central piece out of which all of this arises comes from a social moral matrix. There's a social moral matrix that is at the center of our life circumstance and our way of relating to each other in the world. Consequently, there's always something going on within that context that is either generative or and ennobling, or that it is somehow destructive or disturbing or uh, in some ways degenerative in how it's experienced by us. So to make that a bit clearer, I want to say that we have belief systems. We have belief systems that are that seem to be true. They seem to bear fruit. They seem to give us a certain sense of balance in life. There are belief systems that are false, that we hang on to, that are not borne out by evidence of our senses, that are not borne out by any realities that are shown to us, that are not in line and not aligned with what we experience as directly in our life circumstance with others. And we are here dwelling as socially conceived beings who live in a socially shared world. And there's bound to be, in that socially shared world that we have been born into, there's bound to be conflict and suffering and pain. It's part of the fabric of being and living in it as a human being in the everyday life. So, how we face this circumstance, how we connect to it, is going to be a really substantially important part of how we live in health or not, how we live in wholeness or not, how we live in as a healing being or not, how we live as a holy being, that is one who is living a centered and balanced and contented and peaceful and truthful life, a life of love and hope and faith, and free of and becoming and leading to and living toward becoming a free being, which is what a purpose of our living here on earth shows us to need to fulfill. We need to fulfill, that's one of the purposes of being on earth, to become free, free of circumstances, free of attempts to make us entrapped or enslaved or at the behest at the mercy of the forces outside of us and inside of us that want to keep us chained up, keep us from movement, keep us from living in a in a fulfilled way. So there are beliefs that happen that are misconceived or misperceived. An example that I like to use commonly is two men. This is from India. Two men are walking through a forest, and one man jumps back, and he's frightened. And the other man says to him, "What are you frightened about?" He said, "Look over there. Over there, there's a cobra." And the other man, so he said, "Well, let me take a look." And he moves toward where the man pointed, and he sees that it's not a cobra. In fact, it's a rope. So he picks the rope up and he shows it to the man who's frightened. He said, "Look, you misperceived this. It's not a cobra. It's merely a rope, and you mistook one for the other." So there's a misperception. There are misconceptions, ways our belief systems are conceptions. We have conceptions that we live by. The major, the major one that is the central focus of people's experience, more by and large here on Earth with each other and within themselves. That the purpose of living is to get to a state of comfort and pleasure and avoid pain and live in a non-disturbed state. That's the one that sort of unhinges us and leads to a lot of the other difficulties that we experience. That misconception. There are many others, of course, and these I've written about, and I'm continuing to write about them. My new book that's going to be out somewhat later this year, I hope, will detail a great deal about that and these errors of what I call the errors of living and how they can be remedied. Be that as it may, there are misconceptions and misperceptions that are at play in us where we don't have a clear view, a clarity about the reality and truth of our life situation as we're experiencing it. That leads to one central point, which is the biological, physiological correlate to the misconceptions and misperceptions. And that's called the emergency state. The emergency state is a situation that evolves from what we consider to be a threat to our lives, any sort of threat to any degree. When that happens, and I may say that these threats that are we feel are imminent to us and of great concern to us, which has us go into this physiological state called fight or flight. As this happens and we respond to it, we get to understand and see that 99% at least of these threats that have us respond with this physiological state of fight or flight are false. And there's a very rare instance in which the emergency is true, in which there's an imminent threat that does have a direct bearing on our existence, our life at this moment. That it, in fact, to the extent that a life is put into jeopardy at this moment. A man holds a gun to your head and is about to blow your brains out. The what ISIS used to show on TV with the men kneeling in the desert and a sword to their throat, about to have themselves decapitated, and so on. Those are direct threats that are genuine to our ongoing life. They represent an extinction, an extermination of life right at that moment. That's rare. Most all threats that happen to us of any degree, as we may say, are not threats to our life. So we can experience them every day, as I've talked about before, as stressors. and the stressors need to be here. And everyone who's accompanying me through this webinar now has today has had a stressful experience. That is, from the moment they got up to the moment that they've gotten here to join me, there was at least one stressor that they experienced in their journey from waking up to now. Even in sleep, they may have, before waking, they may have had a stressor in terms of a nightmarish type of dream, a dream of danger, a dream that was frightening, and so on. So even then, it's happening. So it's always there, and we are going to respond to these stressors on a physiological level with fight or flight. No matter the degree of the stressor, the train got stuck in the tunnel, and you were on your way to somewhere, and it didn't, and you had a delay. There's an immediate stressor here, and you're responding with it either with this fight or flight response, and the fight or flight response is what we begin to see unfold as a false emergency state. Why? Because when the threat comes and you respond to it by projecting yourself into a time, place, and circumstance called the future, that is something that's going to happen to me, or if I do this, then that will happen to me, or I will miss this appointment, and then you'll find yourself going through a lot of mental chatter about what the future holds for you. And I must impress upon you that to live a life that's physiologically regenerative and restorative and in balance, the notion of, and to move ahead and to move to a higher level of your own personal growth must be understood that the future does not exist. That is, that it's not something that is a thing. It's not a fact. It's not an existent fact. It's not here in the present moment. It's somewhere where we're moving ahead into by a projection of our emotional life and our thinking life, and behavior based on that leads us to many actions that are injurious to us. So what happens when the threat comes and we go into fight or flight? We project into a time, place, and circumstance that doesn't exist. We begin to feel uneasy, and we start to create ideas and beliefs about what is going to happen out of this. And those are beliefs that we call false beliefs. They're not supported by any evidence. There's no reality to back them up at the present moment. Nevertheless, we get caught up in them and we get wrapped up in them. So what happens in physiological terms is that as there is a perceived threat of some sort, we go into the fight or flight response, and that means that we are gearing up for the emergency. How do we gear? The physiology, the hormonal system of the body is pouring hormones into the system to get us revved up and tensed up and ready for the perceived threat and what it will bring, what it may bring us. So we're going into the fight or flight response now, in terms of throwing all kinds of chemical elements into the body, all kinds of chemical elements that are necessary to mobilize ourselves to be ready to go either to flee or to fight. So when there's a fire in a building and you're in the building and it goes on fire, God forbid, you go into fight or flight. That is, you're either going to run, or you're going to do something in the around the apartment to try to put out the fire. You've got to either fight it or you've got to run from it. You've got to fight. There's a fight or flight response. We're doing that all the time. All the stressors, which are really emergency responses, are driving us through the fight or flight issue. Now the question is there a true threat? Is our life imminently in danger at the moment? And when you are sitting in the living room, in the middle of your living room, and that phone call that you were expecting didn't come, or that check that you were waiting for didn't arrive in the mail, you go into fight or flight. But the difference is that in the true fight or flight, there's a way to release all of this built up tension that's created physiologically and biologically. There's a way to use your musculature to do something about it, to get rid of all that has been building up inside of you. But in the other kind of fight or flight, where there's no true emergency, there is no avenue for the escape of expressing these this built up emotional state and built up physiological state, and there's no outlet for it. You're sitting there, and there is nothing for you to do. Well, what happens? You must get rid of this material. You have steroids coming from the adrenal gland. You have epinephrine, norepinephrine, the stress hormone, is being coming out from the adrenal gland. The insulin is coming out from the pancreas. The pituitary gland is in operation. The thyroid gland is in operation. All of the glands of the hormonal organs are operating. The musculature is tensing up. You're tightening up. Your eyes are bugging open wide. Your muscles are tightening, and you are ready and prepared for something that doesn't exist. For something that doesn't exist. It's about what doesn't exist, about what isn't. Consequently, the body, your physiology is set up in a way that you must get rid of this. You can't have this remaining in your system without it being somehow discharged. It has to be discharged. But there's no avenue, as I mentioned, out there to do it toward. So what happens? These products that you've entered into, that has been entered into the system, having nowhere to go, they break up, they begin to break down, and they break down into waste products. And these waste products are called, in physiological terms, metabolites, metabolic processes that are now waste products. And the body has now a whole set of waste products to take care of. Well, the body then has to then go into action to get rid of these waste products, to mobilize those systems in the body that can clean us out, that we can go into a cleansing response and get rid of them. So we go into some cellular activity to do this, and we call upon these different systems to operate. So you have the lymphatic system, which is the sanitation department of the body, to clean up. You have the immune system that goes after the poisonous elements now to gobble them up. You begin to use all the different orifices of your body to get rid of them. You sweat through the skin. You're defecating, you're urinating. The circulatory system is carrying them away, and so on. And as they do so, they touch the nerve innervation into the arteries and such that you feel pain. And there's headache and muscle ache and all kinds of physiological phenomena are happening to you. And it's all cleaning you out so that you can come back into balance. We have a natural tendency, a natural inclination in ourselves to automatically come back into balance. We're trying to come back into balance. And as we do that, we expect that we will feel better. We look forward to not having to stay in this false emergency state, and something happens. You may get another stressor comes a little later on in the day, and again you're thrown back into the emergency state, the false emergency. You go through this whole process again, or the pain. So you thought it was done, it comes back, and so on. And so we usually are taught and miseducated to rush to relieve ourselves immediately of the difficult, what we call symptoms, which are really cleansing responses to the circumstance. So we go and get the Aleve, or we go and get the Excedrin or the ibuprofen or whatever it is that, to clear up the nausea or the vomiting, which is also maybe taking place, another orifice in which it's coming out, and so on. All the stuff all the toxins and waste are being eliminated from us. Unfortunately, most everyone doesn't understand this, so they run to a physician or some clinician of any sort to get some sort of outside help, which will then be dispensed in some form of pill or potion or something like that to stop the distress that we're in. And we are seeking to get immediate relief. But as we do that, we're misdefining the situation. What we're going through is not pathological. It is helpful to the cause. We're really cleaning ourselves out, and we're allowing it all to emerge out of us in every possible way that it can. And after that does so, we may want to restore some metabolites to ourselves that we're, some vitamins and minerals that we've lost and so on. And we might want to do that so that we can create some sort of balance that way in ourselves, using some natural substances to bring us back into balance. But as we continue to do this, and we constantly in stress in emergency states that are constantly besetting us, and we're treating everything as emergency. And my pen ran out of ink. My cell phone just died. You see, it goes on all the time. There are so many different ways that it comes at us from within. We feel hunger. Or there's a sudden pain. And there's a sudden this, a sudden that. Things are always happening. Shocks coming at us. Conflicts that we're embroiled in. So the toxins that are coming from the environment that we're inhaling or getting exposed to. We go out to eat at the restaurant. We have a lovely meal, and suddenly after that we get food poisoning, and so on. It's always happening. It's never not happening. It's supposed to happen. It has to happen. So far. But what's going on then is that we're calling on the systems of the body to constantly come to our aid, to bring us into a state of balance, to bring us a relief, and to bring us into a state of normal functioning in which we're feeling good. So as we keep going into these false emergency states, we keep bringing the necessity for the other systems of the body, all of those systems to come and clean us out. Well, over time, as this happens, the systems of the body begin to get old because they get taxed, they get overtaxed, they get worn out, and they're called on big time, overtime, to have to keep functioning. And these systems of our body, as this goes on, they get aged, they get older, they begin to break down. And when the breakdown occurs, we call that breakdown decay. And the body begins to decay. And it shows this decaying function by the quantitative term aging. So we begin to look aged, and the body gets old. And just as a sidebar, when Marilyn Monroe died, and there was an autopsy done on her in the 40s, that is, I think she was 44 or something like that. And when the autopsy was done, it said the pathologist said, or the medical examiner said, she had the body of an 80-year-old because there was a constant emergency state, and the body was decaying and was wearing out and aging and getting old and breaking down. And there's the physiology of our demise. Physiology of our demise right there. That decay, and remember, I held this book up to you last time and showed you this book, the Diagnostic Manual of Medical Ailments, 68,000 plus listings of names of diseases. That's when that those diseases are named at the endpoint, where the clinicians are only physically based, who only can see the physical side, we're only looking at you through one lens, one eye, like the ancient myth of the Cyclops, is only looking through that one eye, is starting to name these ailments. And that's a belief, because that's the belief they have of what this ailment is, and what they call you and what they name you, you become. Because the belief is planted in you, and that belief becomes seeded, SEED, in you. And what's seeded begins to grow, and you grow into that belief. But there's only one word. There's only one word. There's only one designation for the whole thing. And that's where all the chronic ailments meet. And they all meet at this one point. They meet at one point, which is called decay. They started at one point called emergency state, and they went from emergency state to decay. And emergency state was ignited by misconceptions and misperceptions, faulty belief systems, either through our sensory mistakes or our thinking errors. And through these errors of these two systems of our body, the emergency state is generated, and from that leads us to decay through the false beliefs, the false emergency states, which are false beliefs generated about what the future holds for me. There is no future. We want to rid ourselves, and from the spiritual perspective of the West. It was stated very clearly when Moses met God at the burning bush, because Moses saw a bush. As a shepherd, he sees a bush that's not consumed by fire. It's on fire, it's not consumed. He raises his sensory awareness to at that point, there must be something. This bush is on fire. And he suddenly had an impulse to raise his sensory awareness to a higher level. He sees what's behind the fire, and he has a connection suddenly to the highest spirit. And he says, "Who are you?" And the spirit answers, "I am the I am. I'm the present, and I will be that I will be. I'm the future." Aha. So now we're getting a different sense about where healing takes place, and what our job is to do for us about taking care of ourselves, and how we stay healthy, whole, healed. And we begin to introduce something called the holy. Because as I mentioned early on in our webinar, that the root, kalo, of the words health, heal, and whole also give rise to the word holy. That we are now enlisting a new system of understanding in which we can't have health, heal, and wholeness. We can't come to this oneness for ourselves without introducing to some degree the holy, the spiritual side of our natures. So what's taking place now is that without that being introduced, without our knowing the larger scope of things, not just the physical, but the emotional, the mental, the social, and this moral side of ourselves, the holy side of ourselves, which says, stay away from the future. You're not there to take charge of the future. You're not in control of the future. You're not here to run the future. You can't predict the future. You can't take God's place, who said, "I am," the spiritual side that said, "I will be that I will be. I'm the one in charge, not you." Stay present to the present. Stay present to the present. Stay where you are now. Don't run away with yourself. Don't run over there. Don't get involved in this illusion about something that doesn't exist for us. It has no factual basis. It's not something that we need to occupy ourselves with, only with the present moment. And what I'm trying to show you is the breakdown function that takes place when you speed ahead and separate yourself from this moment and become divided between now and then, between now and there, between here and there. And being divided between here and there, you're split apart. And your body is registering that. That's my contribution. You see, you can't have any kind of circumstance happening in your life without there being a social difficulty that's at play. And I include the environmental toxins, because that's part of our social networking in the world, in which we permitted these environmental toxins to be spewed into the air to hurt us, and to have the ground contaminated, the earth contaminated, the water contaminated. We're all taking part in it. We're allowing it to happen. It's all as part of the social fabric of being here, and the social system is operating all the time. So there's a social system, there's the mental, the misconceptions, there's the misperceptions, which is the faulty seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and so on. And then there is the physical, and the outgrowth of all of this, all together, reflecting each other in one system, a system of oneness, of wholeness, is reflecting each other. So what we want to do is to look at and examine all these other parts of ourselves. We're not going to neglect the physical. There are many choices you have of taking care of the physical. There are many ways that people have discovered, that are being discovered and continuously being discovered, to take care of the physical. Sidebar: President Kennedy, John Kennedy's son, had the cancer of the bone, sarcoma, cancer of the bone. The kid was cured. How was he cured? He was healed of the cancer. How? He used an herb called Essiac that was discovered by the Cree Indians. The Cree Indians of Canada introduced it. The doctor who took it on to prescribe it in medical terms in Canada was named Cassis, Cass, Cassis, I think her name was. Anyway, Essiac is her name backwards, and he was healed. The kid was healed by this herb. At that point, Kennedy was presented a bill which he would authorize the medical use, and I'm using the term medical in a broad sense, not just to the that would establish this herb as a medicine to be used, and he refused to sign it, and keeping the establishment medical pharmacological system in place as the authority for prescriptions and so on. So, but it happened, and there are many different ways, but that's the physical. And we approach the physical. Of course, what I've been teaching you is to use your inner power, and the power we're born with, the power of the imagination, the power of the image, which is a belief given form, so that we're putting the power of belief into a power of form, which we then can perceive, so that it doesn't remain as an abstraction, but it becomes something available to our sensory perception. And then when our sensory perception has this in place, this belief now is a seed in the womb of our perceptual consciousness, and it gestates there. And as this belief is constantly nurtured, and we repeat our imaginal experience over and over again in a prescribed way over a period of time, and then it gets expressed into the world of what we call time space, into our everyday lived experience as a new experience, a new experiential reality. So our beliefs, as I mentioned very early in our get-together, that study that was done with 30,000 people who had the lowest risk of dying because they believed that they would live. And the people who felt that they would die, they didn't have much of an opportunity to stay on in the world, they moved toward death. But the ones who believed they would live, lived. And we show that because our physiology and our biology begins to shift and to show evidence that there's something about this mental life and its function through the system of imagery that seems to affect or to relate to our physical experience. So we're looking at our physical, emotional, mental, social, and holy, moral life experience as they're all reflecting each other, not causing each other, but they're all one system. And so if we intervene in one area, this certainly then can reflect itself through the other areas. You see, the speaking with someone this past week who is suffering from a a, a condition, uh, what I would call a sunflower condition. The sunflowers were about to bloom, but they hadn't bloomed yet, uh, or the tulips instead of tumors, and so on. And what we came up with by exploring all of these other dimensions, not just leaving it at the physical, which we're not ignoring, and we're not ignoring using outside agents if it seems relevant to use them. Why not? First, but I mentioned that we have time. This is the idea of the diagnostic name of you is doesn't say that your life is at an end now. No matter what the term is that you're given, whatever the name is, your life is not over. It's not nearly over. You have time. So you have time to explore all the rest of it. You have time to see what's there in the physical world that may be useful, given that you use your own resources to try and create the wholeness and the healing, and it doesn't bear fruit. There's always some resource for you to go to use. There's always something around in the external world that may be of value, and there is a load of information about that all over the web as it exists right now. We try to start from ourselves as the agent of healing, that we ourselves are given the resources upon our birth to be our own healer. It says in the ancient wisdom tradition, we're made in the image and likeness of God, and God being the divine spirit, the divine source, the invisible reality of our being in the world. The invisible side of our nature is called soul. It's the infused spiritual essence into our lived existence as a human being. And then we have our material nature, which is physical body and its physiology and so on. We're all of a piece. And we want to come to peace by being all of one piece. And so the possibilities are limitless for what we can do. But we're talking now about how we look at the onset, the genealogy of why we become ill. Now that next takes us to the next step, the physiology of life, because we're all bound to suffer one way or another. It's built into the blueprint of life on Earth as it exists now. By being born into this dual world, we're born into the world where there has to be conflict. The word dual is two, and two means conflict, and two means doubt. And we're born into a world of doubt, and we doubt our competency, we doubt our abilities, we doubt our powers because we've been miseducated to not believe in them and not to believe in ourselves. So the constant miseducation and faulty conditioning of our lives constantly is imposing itself on us that we need these outside forces to create safety and competency and pleasure and well-being for us. And but we're finding that we have all of it built into us. And so this work that I'm teaching is how to gain access to this. So I think you may have caught on to something a bit in that if the emergency state is such a cardinal issue to this experience, so how do we stop becoming ill? What could we do to stop the onset of illness, the onset of this divisiveness of our lives, to stop the false emergency state? What do we do? We know there are going to be emergencies, and so we know that then the false emergencies are going to lead us into the future, which doesn't exist, and sometimes in the past, which doesn't exist either. It's over, ended, buried, dead, finished, gone, has no bearing anymore in our personal lives. It happened, it's over. But we do go back into it with, oh, I could have done that, I should have done that. We go back into it with depression, sadness, regret, remorse of that sort. That I wish I had done that, if only I had done that, and so on. If I could have done that, I would have done that, I ought to have done that, and so on, which is all irrelevant because it's finished. And what you have in front of you is neither the future nor the past. You don't have what we call linear time in front of you anymore. We're stopping our entrance into linear time by staying focused into I am, I am the moment. I am the moment. So we're here now. And what we do now is that when these states of being, these kinds of emergency states come, if we stop the emergency state, if we stop it, we are then not going to go through the rest of the syndrome that I mentioned to you just now, into unusual cellular activity and into uneasy feeling states and into the breakdown pattern and into the body wearing out and having to do all that and the decay. We can stop the decay by stopping our responses to these emergency states, by stepping out of the future, stepping out of the past, coming back into the moment, and telling ourselves the truth. The truth is, the future is an illusion. It doesn't exist. The past is over. It's an illusion. It's finished. It doesn't exist anymore. All that exists for us at any single instant is the single instant. There is nothing but you as a whole being right here now. As soon as you rush into the past or the future, you've divided yourself into two and you've given yourself away into the dual world, into the world of doubt, immobility, and conflict, and weakness, and vulnerability. This is a practice. So what we're doing is talking, and so what helps us along in this practice, of course, is one of the major ways that I teach is the image, because the image comes from a no time zone. It has not to do with the linear dimension of life. It doesn't have to do with the spatial dimension of life that's quantified as the height, width, and depth. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with drawing from this invisible source of endless energy that is always there for us and is willing and lends itself to us all the time without any interest payment, and freely and gratuitously it gives it to us, and it gives it to us gratuitously, and we take it and add it to ourselves and give it to ourselves gratuitously, and even may give it to others gratuitously so that they can benefit from it. And the image is this language that comes from this invisible source, made visible to us, that we can draw on it and use it for ourselves, which is what I've been sharing with you in our get-togethers over these past weeks. So and what I've done by showing you the presence of this book, for example, which has tons of imagery exercises for the condition that we were centering on here in our so far in our get together about the meaning of cancer. So the meaning of cancer now is tied to the meaning of the of emergency states and what it leads to. So emergency state to decay, it's almost in a way a straight line as it moves down the pathways of disorganization in ourselves. And so we are really focusing on coming out of that false emergency state. And how do you know? And the way that I like you to do it is, I think, a twofold way that I like to present to you to do that. One is a very simple question you ask. You need to be honest with yourself. You need to be forthright. You need to be frank. And I may say, as a caveat to what I'm about to say, feelings are real, but they're not the same as facts. So you ask yourself the question, is my life really at stake right now? Am I about to die right at this moment? Yes or no? Honestly, the answer is no. The next person over there, though, sitting over there out there, is saying, yeah, but I feel like I'm going to die. And I said to you the caveat, what you feel is not the same as a fact. The feelings are real. So feelings and facts are not the same. The feeling that you're telling me that you're feeling, anxiety that we talked about, recently what happened in what I was getting about, I was sort of touching on before, was that a person with a tumorous condition, and we were working together. What this person got to was the guilt feelings that were there as part of this whole process of the occurrence of where the tumor ended up. The tumor ended up started out in the leg. I won't go into chapter and verse about the whole story, but just this part, it started out in the leg. Well, what happened with that? It was that this person was running down a staircase with a little child, and tripped, and they fell down the steps, and the kid hit his head on the pavement, and had and then had perhaps a mild concussion from that, and so on. The parent held himself responsible for that, felt guilty, felt that there was an accounts receivable, that there was a large ledger book of what I have to pay off a debt, because guilt means to be in debt. That's what the word means. If you're in debt, truly in debt, pay the debt, and then you clear the books. But the way it works in our consciousness, that we have a ledger book that can never be paid off. So we always feel that we owe it, as though we go back to the past. If only I had done that. If only I had not run down the step. If only I had been more cautious. If only and you go back into the past and try to replay it and sort of kind of repair it that way. No, it's done. It's over. And then the question is, how is the child today? Oh, the child's fine, doing very well, doing well in school, getting along, has friends, and so on. Any other symptoms or anything going on physically? No, everything is good. Still holding on to what was done, even though the facts of the matter bear it out now that everything is fine. In the circumstance, feel loving toward the child. They have a very nice communication. Everything is going nicely. So if it's still being held on to, then through the image, you go back to the scene where this took place, where the event happened. You go back in your imaginal experience to the place, and as you're running down the steps with the child, at that moment, you reverse the memory, you reverse the scene, you turn it around. So you put it into a different context. So you see yourself now stopping on it. For example, I don't want to, intrude on what may happen for you to do this. So you stop. You're running down the steps, and you say to the little child with you, "Let's stop now." And you both stop, and then you walk down the steps very carefully to complete your journey, your descent down the staircase. You turned it around. Will that have an effect on clearing the guilt? Yes. Yes. So you do that exercise. So whatever it is that's making you feel guilty, go back to the guilty experience that was at the center of it, where it started, whatever it was. And it could be guilt about a number of things, but you only need to start with one. Take care of that and go to the next one. And you do it, in the morning when you wake up, reverse it. Do it in the late afternoon, like 5:30, 6 o'clock before, at the after work is done, or the daily chores are over and so on. Or you just about to prepare dinner, whatever it is, do it then, just for a few seconds, and then you can do it at night before you go to bed. So and do it every day, 3 times a day, for up to 21 days. You'll know that it's over because you'll get bored at some point. You'll feel that it's done. You'll feel that there's nothing disturbing you about it anymore, and you don't feel beset by it, and so on. Will that influence? Does taking care of that emotional response reflect on our physical? Yes. Does it reflect on our mental? We mentally feeling in doubt about our failure as a parent. Will it affect that? Yes. Will it affect our social relationships to the spouse, to the family in general? Yes. All of that. And does it affect the holiness of my life? Yes, because I'm no longer making up a story about what I did to as a failure as a parent, which is bearing false witness. That's a deeper story that this seminar doesn't take us to necessarily, because it's a much longer journey that we make through the classes that I give and so on about how to understand this, or in our personal connections with each other. So this is a way of talking about these emotional states that we take care of. We talked about anxiety and the need to and the guilt. And it's two major feeling states that play such a preeminent role as part of the cancering process and as part of all of the disease, all of these processes of becoming decay, all of them. And to the anxiety and these distressing feelings, anxiety, guilt, fear, worry, panic, depression, sadness, shame, and so on. And we can go on ad infinitum. They all feed the decaying process. And we have the way of stopping it. Two ways. Is this a threat to my existence? Yes or no? The feeling is real. You're not lying to me. It's a fact. I feel anxious. I feel worried. That's a fact. You're not lying. It's a fact. It's real in and of itself. But in the scope of, is it connected to, but what is it connected to? What is my conception? What's my beliefs? And you'll find that you have beliefs that are projected into the future or projected back into the past. So these emotional states are acting as fuel for these faulty beliefs. What's a true belief that replaces it? The imagery process. Or a true belief that you construct mentally. And so the true belief is I heal, not or I am healing. I like to be more present tense as you can get. I heal. And the 30,000 people, the ones who are living, they belief system, I live. I live. So there are many forces outside, which we're going to get to next time, which try and push us away from that, to consume us with the belief that I'm going to die, or it's looking bleak for me, or it's pessimistic, or it's not rosy, or there's a black cloud hanging over me all the time, and we blow away the black clouds to let the sun in, and to take charge of yourself as the healer of your own experience. So I think we covered some ground today to show the connection of beliefs, and of course, so when you the truth of the matter, is my life at stake right now? Feeling, the fact, is it at stake? Do the circumstances here show me that I'm about to die? Yes or no? Right now. Once that's in place, you say, oh, so then you make a comment. Don't talk to, just make the comment. That's, you use your name. Use your name. I would say, Jerry just lied. I wouldn't talk to Jerry. I would talk about Jerry. Jerry just lied. And the feeling that has come from that with it, although being real, is a fuel. It's fueling the engine. It's the fuel that stokes the engine to give it a great deal of charge, make it feel as though it is so pertinent to our lives. It's not. That's all. And with that, I want to say goodbye for now. And I'll field the questions for the next half hour. And of course, be very looking forward to meeting you next Thursday for the conclusion of this webinar. Thank you very much. I love you.
First question, how do I address frequent nightmares with main, sorry, How do I frequent nightmares with main scenarios of being late, lost in an unknown place, left without money, documents in a hostile country?
I think I gave the answer because the answer that I gave applies to we talked about dealing with the chronic conditions and so on, with cancer specifically, etc. But it's the same. It's the same method that we use. You go back into the dream. You see what we did with the guilt, for example. We reversed the image. So you go back into the night dream, into the nightmarish dream. You go back into the dream and you reverse it. You change it because you're reversing the memory. We're not talking about any facts, no facts at this point. You're going and you're reversing the memory of the fact. And that's a major first step. So if this nightmarish thing about being chased or coming late, whatever it is, you go back into the night, into the dream, and turn it around so that you are chasing the one who's chasing you, or that you are standing your ground and conquering whatever it is that comes at you. Whatever it is, because the imagination is limitless and anything goes, but you become in charge. So you're taking charge of the situation by reversing it, shifting it, turning it around, bringing it into a new light, changing your frame of reference, seeing it through a new lens. I don't know how many statements I have to make to enlarge upon this, but you just go and turn it around, and that shifts the whole playing field for your life. It gives you a whole different attitude towards everything, and it influences your behavior in your everyday life experience, as well as your feeling state and your mental state and your physical state.
They can also go onto YouTube, and you have YouTube on nightmares.
Oh yes, thanks for reminding me, Rachel. So you can go to the YouTube on that. Yes, that I have.
Next question. How to deal with episodes of heart palpitations accompanied by muscle twitching all over the chest area that will not subside for hours. This happens mostly in the evening and nighttime. Which exercise would you recommend?
Well, I hope that you would find it for yourself. You look at the situation, you have twitching and palpitation, so you have movement, a lot of movement, the beating of the heart against the chest wall. And what else besides the beating of the chest wall? What else was there? Oh, twitching, muscle twitching. And of course, is this a true emergency? No. Is my life at stake? No. Heart palpitations are never a true emergency. And muscle twitching is not a true emergency. But the point of it is, what would you do to bring that twitching and palpitation, which is a rhythmical movements, into balance? What would you do? Well, somebody may have come up with it now, and you would ask yourself, what would be something that could bring balance to me? What came to me in looking at that, and I have it in my healing visualizations book, Creating Health Through Imagery. You put a metronome into your heart, and the metronome goes do, 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 like that. And as you do that, notice if the twitching, and you do it with the intention of stopping the twitching and stopping the palpitation, and you get a rhythmical beat. So I do it with the intention, I do the metronome exercise with the intention of giving rhythmical beat to the heart and the muscle twitching stopping. And it's taking me a few seconds or sub-seconds. And you do it whenever you feel the twitching and the palpitations, and you do it again. So you're now placing in a new possibility. You're giving yourself a new option for coming into oneness and wholeness.
Next question. Which exercise would you recommend to resolve very slow wound healing after navel hernia surgery?
Well, wound healing you do through the healing light of the West is blue. So you bring any kind of blue light that you can muster into the area to affect the healing of the area and help the incision to heal if there's an incision that was made and it was sewn up to heal that, and so on. So you can put a blue flame, not a blue flame, but you can have a laser light washing the area and creating a healing coming together of the area. And so the blue light in any form, and the color blue in any way that you can put a blue cushion over it that is sending blue light into the whole area, healing it up, and so on. It is the healing way, the healing color. In any way you can bring blue.
Anyone who is asking questions on chat will not be answered. Please go to the question and answer section of the webinar icons and ask it there. Next question. How realistic do the images of human organs used in the imaging exercise need to be?
Well, most people,
i.e. colored in 3D or just outlines as in coloring pages would suffice.
I'm not clear about necessarily the question, but the most of us do not know what the inside of our body looks like. So two things I would recommend. One is there's a very nice book out that was made for the general public, which is quite diagrammatic and valuable to understand what the inside of the body looks like. It's called the Anatomy Coloring Book. There you're asked by the authors to do color in, and they show you the technique they give you for coloring in the anatomical parts of your body. What's helpful about the images to get acquainted with the inside of your body is to call up from the computer. You can always call up any part of the body you need to see. But the thing that I mentioned it earlier in our webinars, that you would stare at you would look at the image. You would look at the part of the body that you're dealing with. So you stare at it for about 20 or 25 seconds and then close your eyes. And when you close your eyes, you'll get what's called an eidetic image. You'll get a very vivid image of that part of the body. And that could be then the focus in which you use focus in your imagery toward that part of the body. Did I answer the question?
I think the only thing I would add is to really not, once you've seen what the inside looks through either looking at a coloring book or online, to not be concerned whether you have the perfect image.
Oh, yes, very nice. Yes. You don't have to have
your image.
Right, you don't have to have the perfect image. You get a sense of it, some aspect of it that you become acquainted with can be sufficient. So we're not looking for you to have a perfect representation imaginally that way, but some idea would be very good. And the Anatomy Coloring Book is enormously helpful that way.
Next question. What about illnesses or health problems that are passed on or run in some family lines? Is it about thought patterns, belief systems that get passed on from generation to generation, or something else? I thought maybe it's guilt that's passed on from the top.
So we look at it this way. In the ancient wisdom literature, it says that the errors of the fathers in Genesis, the errors of the fathers are passed on through 4 generations. What it means is that there are 2 forms of genetic transmission. One is a physical genetic transmission that's passed down through the family line. Something valuable that I learned from my teacher in the beginning years of our work had to do with her point of view is that all chronic illness, her point of view, all chronic illness had to do with a passing on through the genetic makeup of venereal disease of one sort or another. I said, all chronic illness? She said, all chronic illness, all of it. Whatever its diagnostic category is, it's passed on through a family transmission of some venereal disease. And she said, and in connection with that, where the venereal organisms hang out in the body are at the lower end of the spinal column. So that we established an imagery exercise to wash out the lower end of the spinal column, to use a hose of spiraling blue light, spiraling blue water, an intense stream of spiraling blue water to wash out the lower end of the spinal column, and then use a nice golden air gun to dry the area off. And there are 4 places in the body where organisms lodge and propagate: the sinuses, the stomach, the large intestine, and the lower end of the spinal column. The sinuses have those organisms, like staph and strep and viruses over there, and then you have H. bacillus and H. pylorus in the stomach. They're the common ones that are very much in public consciousness now. And then you have E. coli, which is the food contamination that you get, the food poisoning from faulty handling of not washing your hands after, in the bathroom, and then whatever. And so the E. coli is the major organism there for ailments. And then the lower end of the spinal column, those 4. And all of them, you wash them out and clean them out, and whatever means you want to use, and dry out the areas. And if you like, you can keep a golden light in each of those areas to prevent any further intrusions. Because all of these organisms and these cells, like cancer cells, are dark. They work in the dark. They are part of darkness. So there's one exercise that I've used years and years ago, where a person would take a guard dog or a Doberman Pinscher or German Shepherd, one of those types of dogs, put a golden leash on and a golden collar, and then take a light and go through the body, and organs that are decaying, and cells like cancer cells that are of that erosive force, they give off a smell, and they don't emit light. They stay dark, but they give off a smell, and they give off a sound that's discordant. And the dogs, you could use a lion or a tiger, any kind of animal, predatory like that likes to eat decayed or meat and stuff. They will go and sniff it out, sense it, hear it, smell it, and chomp it off, and so on. And you give the animal free rein to eat as much as it likes. When it's full, it'll let you know. And then you breathe out and open your eyes. Okay.
Okay. I also thought she might be referring to what you call psychogenetic.
Oh yes, thank you. So the other form of transmission is what we call sociogenetic. The errors of the fathers are sociogenetic, so that if there's been errors of living in the family line, for instance, a man came to see me who gambled his family money away, and he couldn't stop himself. He's a compulsive gambler. And when we went back in the family line, he could trace it back to his great-grandfather. Great-grandfather was a gambler who squandered the family money, created enormous amounts of conflict and enmity in the family. His grandfather the same, his father the same, both on his paternal side, and he. And so that the sociogenetic error was passed down through the family line. There's been adultery in the family at some point in the family line. Sociogenetically, that error of living gets passed down, and then it may find itself expressed in your circumstance, and so on. So there's a sociogenetic transmission, and there is a physical genetic transmission. Both of them are operating. So we seek to repair the sociogenetics as well as the physical genetics by turning the physical around and turning the sociogenetic around and making corrections in your family life about that.
Next question. People have basic needs that have to be looked at. Is it that what you do while talking, is that what you do while you talk to your clients? Are these needs the ones that lead into stressful, life-threatening situations?
Okay. Can you
Do I have to concentrate on these needs to stop going into the future?
Can you repeat the question again?
People have basic needs that have to be looked at. Is that what you do while talking to your clients? Are these needs the ones that lead into stressful, life-threatening situations?
Well, essentially the first question I ever ask anybody when they come to see me is, what do you need? Because what do you need right now has always been what you've needed throughout your life, but you are able to articulate it now in a new way. Because when you were 5 or 6 years old, for example, you couldn't have the verbal capacity you have now, or the brain function formulation capacity to say it in the way you're saying it now. But what you need now has always been the belief that has been with you, what we call the nuclear beliefs that around the faulty beliefs around which we organize our lives. They're usually one or two, and they are usually expressed early in life by behavioral activity that tries to state it. But the more you become evolved in terms of brain functioning, which begins to show that it's coming into place after your baby teeth fall out, you begin to be able to verbalize more clearly. But then as you grow older, you can verbalize even more clearly. But that need now is what's always been there. And so we see that organizing belief, which has been misleading, has been a false belief, has now necessary to turn it around, to reverse it. It's always about reversing these beliefs, which we're able to do through acts of will and acts of imagery, and acts of remembering ourselves, to put ourselves back together, and to remember our relationship to our holiness, to our invisible nature, which all comes up and is all taken, which are part of the healing work and coming into wholeness and into health.
Do you have anything to say about the approach to reversing chronic allergies, allergic rhinitis, etc., which have been there since childhood?
Yes, again, remember that we're talking about what are the allergens themselves, what may they be, and of course there are some ways, that we would deal with the physical element of it. For example, I would ask you to wear a space helmet, like the astronauts wear, and the space helmet has a tube that generates blue light into the helmet, filled with blue light, and you're breathing in the blue light, and as you breathe out, you're breathing out the gray smoke, which is the carbon dioxide and the chronic stress hormone, through a tube that puts it out into the atmosphere and drifts away. I think you can conceive and perceive that for yourself. And then, as you're breathing in the blue light and breathing out the gray smoke and becoming quiet and calm, you hear the allergens, whatever it is, banging up against the helmet. They can't get in. They can't pass through, and they are rejected. They bang against the helmet and then are bounced off. And when you're going outdoors, you would do that the first thing before you leave the house. As you're leaving the house, put the helmet on. When you come back in, take the helmet off. And if it's in the house, you imagine wear the helmet in the house if there are allergens in the house that you have to contend with, and so on. And take it off before you go to sleep. But now a fundamental question is that, okay, we've dealt again with an ailment that's chronic. The fundamental question, my first question is, and as it is with the cancer patients or anybody, I sorry to use these diagnostic terms, but it's just part of our conversation now to make it easier in a different way. So the first question is, for the allergy, who are you allergic to? Not what you're allergic to, but who are you allergic to? And that generally uh, uh, generates a good deal of opening up about what the social situation is and what the disturbance is and so on. And so the first question is always about who. What's the social difficulty that's going on in the person's life? Person comes with heart ailments, right? Uh, are you eating your heart out over something? Is this a lost? Is there a lost love? Are you feeling heartbreak and things like that? So we want to build in and bring in the social relationships, which also, and then we can look at the mental and so on. And the point of it is anything that we learn along the scope of physical, emotional, mental, social, moral, we can intervene with. And when we intervene in one, it's going to filter its way through to the other systems because it's all one piece. These five dimensions are all one singular stream of reflection, uh, interdigitating with each other. So we can intervene here and there, and it will affect here and there. So it will have its effects throughout the whole system. That's the beauty of this work.
Next question. What to do if there's a real emergency that's life-threatening, such as someone tries to rob you or you're in an earthquake, etc.?
First thing is you want to make a distinction between real and true. Things that are real may not be true. We talked before about anxiety being real or anger being real or guilt being real. They're real, but are they attached to truth? That's what they are fact, but are they attached to truth? And so then the question is, what is it that what's the thoughts that they're attached to? Okay, so now if there's a true emergency, not a false emergency, like an earthquake is happening, yes, and you then uh, you're then focused in the moment, because generally speaking, people who face true emergencies find themselves free of any extraneous thoughts or ideas or feelings. They get honed in and focused clearly and directly into the moment. They're really in the instant of the instant. They're in the presence of the present. And at that moment, I think that it's necessary to, if you have the composure and the presence of mind, to do, if you are able to do that, to pray or to see an image of yourself being taken up by an angel, free from the traumatic event that's happening for you. Uh, but bringing yourself to bear and to play in the circumstance and so on. As long as you stay out of the future and stay out of the past as best as you're able to do in those kinds of states, information will come to you from the invisible reality about the next step to take. The invisible reality will send you info. And when you're in truth towards yourself and composed in yourself, the universe responds to you in truth. When you're in discombobulation and discord and in doubt and in severe anxiety and all of these distressing emotional states that have to do with the future or the past, the universe sends you messages of pain or suffering of some sort to show you that you're not in balance. So but the messages do come if you stay true to the moment, even in those. I did mention, I think, in previous times we've been together, where, for example, my friend had a man come and stick a gun into his stomach and say, if you give me your money or I'll kill you. And his response was to laugh, and the man ran away. So he had the presence of mind to do that. And Milton Erickson, the psychiatrist who developed neuro-linguistic programming, had incidents like that happen to him, where a man came up to him in the parking lot of the hospital and threatened him with a gun and said, "Give me your money or I'll kill you." And he looked at his watch and he said, "Oh, it's 2:45." And the man ran off. So he had the, yeah, we do have the capacity for the presence of mind if we're staying true to the moment. The moment will give you everything you need. I promise. And I promise, because I was promised by God, who said in Exodus 15:26, if you stay true to me, if you stay true to the spiritual side of your life, I promise you, you won't become ill. It says there, if you give ear to my statutes and these laws, obey these laws of life, this gift that I've given to you to live a sober, happy, contented, humor-filled, joyful life. I promise you, and a truthful life and a loving life, I promise you, you won't become sick.
Next question. How to stop vision deterioration with age? That is, keep it 20/20.
Oh, keep your life 2020. Uh, you keep your vision, because when the vision is going, you're having to ask yourself, is this something I don't want to see? We talked about the reflections of the physical with the emotional and with the social and the mental, right? The person who developed the tumor in the leg was the indicator that there was some guilt feeling about running too fast, about moving too fast. So when there's a vision issue, you are asking yourself, is there something I don't want to see? Is there something I'm turning a blind eye to? Is there something I've seen that I can't stand that I want to turn away from? So you want to ask yourself these questions about the reflections. You know that in the story of Oedipus, when Oedipus finds out that he killed his father and sleeping with his mother, he tears his eyes out of a feeling of guilt. So is there some guilt about something you've seen, or something that you're ashamed of that you don't want to be seen, and that you're trying not to be seen, and so on. If your hearing is going, am I turning a deaf ear to something? That's something I don't want to hear anymore. Is there something that I'm looking to turn away from and not hear about in my family, or what's going on with this person or that, something like that. So every single thing that's going on in the body is a statement about what's going on in your social life. And it's the body and the social life are reflecting each other. And it's expressing itself not only through the physical, but also through the emotional and the mental and the holy. Not giving ear to the statutes of the Lord, not living the holy life, that the gifts of the laws that give us a purpose of living a loving, healthy, and disease-free life.
Okay, last question. What image would you recommend for migraine that is coming back regularly that started after giving birth to my son?
Yeah, there's usually there is uh, uh, in the healing visualizations book, I have exercises for migraine. So it usually has to do either with the vascular disturbance that is there, or a endocrine disturbance. And so you need to go and find out which may be prevalent at this point that's happening. And then and then you'll find in the healing visualizations book, you'll find the exercises for migraine for either one of those two. Either one is really predominant in the condition, and you want to take care of that. Okay, so I wish you all a very pleasant week, a wonderful weekend, and can't wait to see you again next Thursday. Again, love and blessings. Bye, everybody.